Now leaders from across West Africa set to meet for an emergency summit. Following the coup in Niger, soldiers announced the military takeover on Wednesday, ousting President Mohamed Bazoum, who'd been in power for only 2 years. On Friday, the head of the Presidential Guards Unit, General Abdourahmane Tchiani, announced that he was Niger's new leader, saying that insecurity, economic woes and corruption had led him to seize power. Now countries, including key allies of the US and the EU bloc and France, say that they will not recognize the coup's leaders, with some suspending security cooperation and budgetary aid, while there are concerns in the West about which countries the new leader will now align with, potentially moving closer to Russia, which took place after coups in neighboring Burkina Faso and Mali ahead of that meeting of the Economic Community of West African States and the West African Economic and Monetary Union. The coup's leaders have warned against any military intervention being taken against them. Earlier I spoke to James Bonnet, a senior fellow with the conservative think tank the Hudson Institute, and he told me about the coup and whether or not it had come as a surprise. It is and it isn't, insofar as I don't think that anyone other than maybe some people in the army who are following some of the kind of internal political maneuvers very closely expected that there would be a coup this week. That said, I think that a lot of Western policy makers for a long time have kind of overestimated the kind of stability of Niger and underappreciated the fact that this is a country that has experienced many coups throughout its history, and also one in which there is still a very fragmented security sector in which there are many rival units, both traditional units that have kind of been involved in some of these pushes in the past, as well as kind of new almost special forces units, some that have actually been trained by the US and France, that are kind of creating a new political environment, a new political landscape within the military that has been very difficult for the president to control. What is it about coups and this area of West Africa? Well, I think some would argue that, there's something of a domino effect, if you will, that when military see that a neighboring country that officers have managed to pull off a successful coup in that region, in that country, are without any serious international sanction, or without themselves are kind of losing power to a democratic, to a domestic opposition, then they assume that the conditions were set in their own country to do the same. And I think that what we've seen in Mali and Burkina Faso, both of which experienced 2 coups in the past few years, 2 coups each, and then also in Guinea as well, that there's definitely a sense that the West Africa region, that there is not really any serious kind of cost to staging a coup in terms of the kind of a regional diplomatic response or the international response. What we've seen though, unfortunately, in Mali and Burkina Faso especially, is that the military regimes have come to power have been very ill-equipped to handle the insecurity in their states, the prevailing insecurity primarily in the form of jihadist insurgency. But I think, unfortunately for the purchase in Niger, their primary concern is not necessarily about the kind of status of the jihadist insurgency there. Their primary concern has more to do with their own kind of political and then financial power within Niger, within the security sector in Niger. Is this primarily a problem for Africa or the African leaders, the African organizations to solve? Because yes, we've seen you've got 15 days to put a civilian government back in place, but then you've also got the likes of the EU, France. You've got the US also saying that they don't recognize the new leaders. Nigeria is Niger's neighbor, relatively stable. They have their own security issues, particularly with the kidnappings for ransom and etc. What do they make of what's taking place in their neighbor. Well, I think that the impression I'm getting, speaking to friends and colleagues in Abuja and such is certainly that there's a concern about kind of the broader impact on regional disability that this coup might have in Niger. I think, we can read for ourselves the statements from President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria. He's been very quick to condemn this coup. I think he's trying to make a statement. This is very early in his tenure with it as being chair of ECOWAS, so this is a very early challenge for him, and I think he wants to come out and kind of make a forceful statement. We'll see tomorrow, or rather, later today, we'll see what comes out of this extraordinary summit that he's called in Abuja within ECOWAS. But I think so far, certainly publicly, the Nigerians as well as the other ECOWAS member states have made it very clear that they don't that they want to return to civilian rule in Niger. And I also think that Nigerians very understandably are concerned about kind of the stability of their northern neighbor and what impacts that might have, what second order effects that might have on their own security and their own stability. James, there are lots of words of condemning these coups and lots of meetings, and by these organizations, does it ever change anything? Is there a character or state? Because it doesn't seem to change very much. I think unfortunately the recent history of the Sahel has been quite bleak in that regard. We've heard a lot of these similar condemnations after the coups, and Mali, Burkina Faso, again, both of those countries experienced 2 coups a piece. We heard similar things after Kenya. I do think that echoes to the language has been a bit more forceful and a bit quicker in this instance than it was previously. There's often been a lot of prevarication and kind of delays in issuing some of these statements and condemnations, but at the end of the day, I think it is unfortunately a situation in which that the patches, the people, and the junta in Niger is not necessarily going to be deterred simply by rhetoric from the neighboring states, and even sanctions, which are the other tool that are both ECOWAS and the US and the EU and others kind of have at their disposal. Sanctions only have a limited effect on people who are willing to put their on the line to take power from their own president. So I think unfortunately this is a situation where we shouldn't expect too much to necessarily change too quickly. And that was James Bonnet from the Hudson Institute speaking to me earlier.